It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstye Network, a show where we look at the dollars and the nonsense of the sports media business industrial complex. Maybe I should call this one a very special episode.
It's an 80s sitcom.
The moment you've all been waiting for. But yes, we will be talking most things Snyder. But Steve, first of all, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. You know, the clouds have parted, the sun is shining. Things are looking optimistic. Yeah, it's I'm doing okay, man. How about you?
Oh, not bad, not bad. I think what the fans are begging to know out there is when, whatever qualifiers you want to put on it, Snyder, has handed over the keys to billionaire X or capital firm X. Will you return to fandom?
No.
No.
See, it's kind of like breaking up with your girlfriend. It's like when it's over, it's just over. And my problem is that it's not the Redskins anymore. It's not the team of my youth. I don't live in the DC area. I have no obligation to root for the home team. It's not my home team. And it's just over. And I hate the name Commanders. And it's just a different franchise. And I don't have any connection with it. I love talking about football, and I'll continue to do that. But am I a fan? No, not really.
All right. Well, there you go.
I wish Snyder, he needs to get what's coming to him, and I'm all for that. But will I be am I going to put a big Commander sign in my front yard? Absolutely not.
Well, I'm still under the proclamation that I made last Super Bowl Sunday, which was if Snyder is no longer the owner by the next year's Super Bowl, so the one that's coming up, that I would get a Commander's tattoo. So my
God.
My rooting interests now are have a bit of a caveat that I'm hoping that the official sale goes through whatever February date is the Monday after the Super Bowl.
Now, do you have other tattoos?
I do not.
So you're not looking forward to it. So we got to talk about this. So is the tattoo going to be, what's their logo? Just the W? It could be like a giant W logo on your stomach or what?
I never specified size. So here are my slight outs.
A Mike Tyson tattoo on the side of your face?
We're thinking small. And I don't think anyone's going to hold me. I can't remember if I said Commanders, but I would prefer the W. Especially because we aren't sure. Now we're not sure Commander survives. I mean, that's something
we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So that's the last thing I'm going to do. So I think if I lose the bet, which I actually don't think I will, just on a timing standpoint, I would go with a very small W somewhere.
I don't know, man. We'll get into this. It's not impossible to think you could close.
No, it's not. I didn't say impossible. I'm just saying that.
Now I'm rooting for it just to see what you have to do. Of course, what are they going to do? Sue you? If you don't.
Yeah. I mean, it's just my own. It's my own personal word and honor.
But it would be kind of funny if you did that and then Commanders is gone the next day and you're stuck with it forever.
Yes, I'm already tightening my argument about why it should not be Commanders. So.
By the way, before we get started, rest in peace to Dave Butts.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Yeah, I told you off the air my Dave Butts story, but I won't get into all of that quite all that, but I knew him a little bit, which is to say I've met him a couple times. I have had his Super Bowl ring on my finger, which was unbelievable. And I'll just tell you that the ring was there was a woman sitting next to me when he passed this thing around to 4 or 5 people, and she put it completely over her wedding ring, diamond and everything. It was so big. Like she slipped it right over her diamond on her ring finger. But Dave was the Dave I knew a little bit was quiet, like just a nice, decent guy. Wasn't flashy at all, wasn't outspoken, wasn't loud and obnoxious. He had a lot of dignity. and certainly a Redskins legend, and rest in peace. And but our condolences to his family.
Yeah, ultimately, he's only 72, which in today's world, although life expectancy has actually dropped the last couple of years, average, um, isn't super old nowadays, But
No,
yeah, that's very sad, very sad. He was a all-timer, that's for sure. So R.I.P. Dave Butts. Our condolences to his family and to all the fans out there. And maybe, just maybe, the Commanders will, understand that his name is not spelled Butts. When they,
no, they'll screw it up somehow. They already messed Mosley up and Fletcher up, so
yeah. So let's just hope that they can at least fact check their spelling when they do whatever they are going to do. He
which
is in
could
the
be
ringer
nothing,
already,
by the way.
which could be nothing, right? I think they sent a press release yesterday, but yeah, whatever. All right, so let's get into this. So this has been a busy week, and we record this on Saturdays. You're listening to it sometime, Wednesday morning ish. Hopefully, right as it comes out, right as it hits your inbox, right as it hits your podcast feeds. Um, so we don't even know. So the one caveat we should start is we're not addressing any news that happens from about Saturday at 11 a.m. to whenever past that date and time. So there could be more news, so we're going on whatever we've got on Saturday morning, but it has certainly been a busy week where it looks like apparently all signs indicate they've at least said that they are exploring all options about a sale. And this dropped Wednesday first with an obviously planted story in Forbes, because the team statement literally followed it by about 3 to 5 minutes. So this was all coordinated,
We're
leaked
talking
Forbes
about Dan
story.
Snyder, by the way. We never actually said that.
Oh yes, Dan Snyder, right? I'm just assuming. I'm hoping you fill in the gaps. Yes, the Dan Snyder, the Snyders, the dual CEOs, Dan and Tanya, are exploring all options to put the team up for sale. A lot of ambiguity, a little bit about what that means. The statements are probably intentionally vague. It could probably be one of three things, right, Steve? It could be I'm looking for minority owners to get an influx of cash, realizing that I'm short on cash and I'm going to have to put the bill for the stadium myself. It could be a path of looking for a minority owner with a plan to take over, or it could just be a straight up, buy the team for me.
Yes, it could be all three of those things. I know, obviously, what the fans want. Um, However, I just for me, the statement that Dan and Tanya put out, or the team put out on their behalf, was vague enough that it didn't convince me necessarily that they're 100% all in on selling, despite what people want. And certainly, what happened, I think, is the Forbes story came out. Then the team panicked and had to do something, and so out comes the statement. I doubt if that Forbes article hadn't come out, I don't know if we would have heard about any of this. So what they have done is hired Bank of America, like their securities branch of Bank of America, to explore a sale, because you can't just sell a team. It's not like you put an ad in the newspaper, team for sale. It's a very complicated transaction and everything. So Bank of America's job is going to be to hunt down, and a whole team of lawyers along with that, to hunt down buyers, and then do a sale. And the sale I would assume, would be a stock sale. The Washington franchise is owned by a company called Pro Football Inc., which is owned now by 100% by Snyder and his family. And so presumably what they would do is a stock sale of Pro Football Inc., although it could be an asset sale, but I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But Snyder, as Chris said, needs money for a stadium. Now, this is what I do for a living. So let me tell you guys how this works. You don't just write a check for $2 billion and build a stadium. It's Every project has construction financing, nearly every single project. And how it works is you'll get some bank or team of banks, in the case of 2 billion, because no bank lends 2 billion to anybody by itself. Anyway, and they will do like 80%. And then your job as the developer is to put up the remaining 20%. So what Dan needs cash for is that. for his capital equity injection. So you got to think, if it's a $2 billion project, you're thinking several $100 million, probably maybe 300 or 400 million at least. So that's what he needs. That's what he would need cash for. I don't think he necessarily needs cash to live. Yeah, he's had a $10 billion fine or $10 million fine to pay. He had what was the Kroenke settlement? $7 million per team, I think. He had to pay that. But the cash would really be for a stadium. So it truly and honestly could be that, or it could be, Chris, what you and I have been talking about for seems like 2 years at least. Maybe Jerry Jones and a team and a group of owners went to him and said, "Listen, homie, we have the votes. We're going to get you out, and you can either go the easy way or the hard way." And Dan picked the easy way. That's possible too. I don't really know what to think quite yet. I mean, my hope is that he's gone, but I'm not really convinced that he's given up just yet. What do you think?
I was highly skeptical when the news hit.
Oh, I
Or
was
not
too.
skeptical. Skeptical maybe being the wrong word. I was just like, well, this could go. My brain, leave my heart on the side. My brain definitely went to well, this could be a lot of things, and there's no doubt because everybody knows that bringing on minority owners is his only path, right? We know he's getting no help from any of the three municipalities that he would have to potentially deal with. We can pretty much figure out by reading between the lines that the NFL isn't even willing to do their sort of like minimum what they would do in these situations for their owners, which is what, the 200 million or whatever. Um, they're not going to extend his debt limit. So there's no help from the NFL. There's no help from these municipalities. And we can pretty much know, I know there's a lot of debate about how much money he has and lost and cash on hand, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's actually good arguments along that scale. But one thing we know for sure is he can't finance a stadium by himself as he sits right now. So anybody who's looking and thinking about this knows that his only path, and the Wickersham, ESPN, the other guy, Vanetta article pretty clearly said that the league views his get out of jail card as being able to deliver a new stadium. So there is sort of one path for Snyder. So, and that path would necessitate a minority owner injection of cash and to be able to finance and lawyer up to do the stadium. So we know that that's his only route. So when I see something like this, my first thing is, oh well, he's laying the pavers down to walk that road. I will say that they're reporting the rest of the day the news of the potential federal criminal investigation, and then a lot of the reporting and a lot of smart people kind of reading between the lines has had me by today more convinced this is probably the full sale. Now, I think everything's on the table, and I think they probably think everything's on the table, right? I think they want to see what's out there. I think that the bottom line is, and seems to be, what a lot of people kind of rest their head on, is that yes, we can say get yourself enough people to buy in and gobble up 45% of the stake. You get 2 to 3 billion walking in the door. Blah blah blah. You have to find somebody who wants to get in bed with Snyder, and not only get in bed with him from a business perspective, which, the bodies are everywhere, right? You have to step over bodies to get to that place. So the evidence is there that partnering on a business level with Snyder is not good business, right? So that's just a fact. And then two, how much liability are you walking into by then signing your name? There's investigations all up and down. Now we got federal, we've got local, we've got league, we've got civil cases, we got stuff in the criminal courts potentially. So you don't. Do you want to sign up for that? That seems pretty hard to find that you're going to get people that are going to want to do that.
Well, also remember that he just borrowed several $100 million to buy out his other minority
Yeah.
partners, and so he's got a lot of debt service going on here. And really and truly, the NFL refusal, a hypothetical NFL refusal to let him increase his debt limit, is the end. It's just the end, period. Because that's the only way to build a stadium. He can't finance it himself. Nobody would. Anybody outside of like an Elon Musk level of money would do that. So if he can't finance it, it's just over. Um, so that's one. But the criminal investigation, for those of you who didn't see this part of it, what has happened is the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, is that what the name of that committee? I think that's the name of the committee. The committee's been investigating them. Apparently wrote a letter, basically a referral. Basically, they referred it to the Department of Justice. What they referred are the allegations that Jason Friedman brought. Friedman was the guy who said that the team was cooking the books and had two separate sets of financial records. He alleged that what they were doing was taking money from Redskins game ticket sales and putting it on concerts. They mentioned Kenny Chesney. One of the emails said something about Taylor Swift. And so what that is, the net effect of that is then allegedly they sent the records with the smaller amount of ticket revenue to the NFL, and that number is what got factored into the collectivists. Everybody shares ticket revenue money that goes to all over, meaning that Washington allegedly was keeping a larger share than they should. So that was part of it. Now, we don't really know if DOJ is really investigating this, if it's just a letter in a drawer, if they're taking it seriously, because there wasn't really any real decent evidence that I saw of this. It was an allegation, but there's that. But I think you make a very, very good point, and I mentioned it on the Hogsty, Chris, which is that who's going to walk into this? Now, that goes both ways, though. Yeah, minority partners, but also a sale. I mean, it seems to me that if there is really a real federal criminal investigation going on, that may depress the value of the franchise in a sale too. Because as you say, um, allegations would be against the team, and just because Snyder's gone doesn't make any difference. That investigation still goes on. So I don't know who would want to walk into that at any level, whether majority shareholder or minority shareholder, at least at full value. So part of me thinks that it may drag on at least until that part is wrapped up. Could that part be wrapped up? Who knows? It depends on how seriously DOJ is taking it. I think we can all agree probably that if this coming Tuesday's election goes the way the polls think, control of the House will probably flip, which means that committee's going to end, or that committee investigation is going to end. But that doesn't mean DOJ's investigation would end. That could go on for years potentially. So I think that is a problem he has too, and it makes me wonder if if he sells, he's going to have to sell at a discount. Now, in terms of minority shareholders, I get what you're coming from. Who would want to get in bed with Snyder because it all goes bad? But if there's one thing that I could trust in the world, other than the fact that Eddie Van Halen was the greatest guitarist who ever lived, it's that the NFL always makes money. What did they just have happen? Sign new media contracts. You could sell 0 tickets and still make money as a shareholder in an NFL team. So while Snyder is evil and all of that, and I agree, and it just goes bad, it's also a guaranteed moneymaker. So I think you could probably find somebody equally as equally scummy as Snyder is out there somewhere who would probably do it. I think in terms of being a minority shareholder, but the whole criminal investigation, I think, throws a huge monkey wrench into it.
And also those potential minority owners have to get gate kept by the league.
Yes.
So this is another place where the league can just turn off the nozzles, right, and just force his hand into a full sale. So that a lot of people, and listen, including me, criticize the NFL about how they've handled this, and they've handled this horribly. But you can actually see their strategy now, right? Just churn off every spigot, right? Just force his hand in every, they control every part of this. They now have control because they don't want to vote, right?
They don't want that at all.
They
don't want like a vote off the island Survivor style. They don't want that.
No, and they probably have them, and that's probably part of those internal room negotiations. Listen, Dan, we've got the votes, but they don't want to go on record. They don't want to do a vote, right? So you can just see where they put a roadblock and put themselves in a control position at every piece of this, and you can tell they're just doing a squeeze play.
Yeah, I used the Nixon Watergate analogy on Hogsty because I think it's kind of apropos. And after the plumbers broke into the Watergate building and then they tied it to Nixon, basically, and he got impeached in the House, and basically they went to him and said, we have the vote in the Senate, either leave or we're going to make you leave, and he left. And that's it seems like that's sort of what's happening to Snyder here, as you said, Chris. I mean, you send Bob Kraft, tell Bob Kraft to get up off his masseuse's table and go see Dan and just say what you said, which is, we got the votes. We'll let you go the easy way or the hard way. And that does seem to be what is going on here a little bit, which is, I was skeptical too. I think I've had the same reaction you do, which is, as soon as I saw this, I thought this is minority share, a hunt for minority shareholders. But as the days went on, like you, I swore it just kind of feels like they're going to end up with a full sale. This sort of feels like that. And I do think if there's a new owner, at least one with a semi-decent reputation, that the stadium play comes back on the table from Virginia, Maryland, and maybe even DC, because it was really,
I think even the RFK site becomes
the
viable.
RFK site is dead.
I don't think so.
DOA,
I
dead.
think you'd have the political. I think do I think it's a long shot? Probably, but I think if you got, let's assume the owners, even anyone on the list isn't gonna. I think that becomes possible.
I don't know, because don't forget that RFK site is owned by the federal government and leased to the District of Columbia on a long-term lease that's expiring in like 10 years or something. Don't hold me to the date, but it's something like that. So what it would take an act of Congress, to lease this place, and they have shown no interest whatsoever, good or bad, like zero, in that at all. And you throw into that the DC, a lot of the DC City Council doesn't want that. They want that to be affordable housing. Um, is it possible? I mean, it's possible in the same vein, that Heidi Klum is going to show up on my doorstep. It's possible.
I don't think I would disagree that I think you would have I think there would be the political will. I think it's that ginormous, and I think the problem was that much him. Now, is it a long shot? Maybe, I see that point, but I actually think it would become viable. You've got to line a lot of things up, but I think you have to remember, these are all locals. The federal government, everybody wants to see this guy gone, and everyone wants to return a franchise to its power position. This is why this is a sleeping giant. This is why people are talking about $6 and $7 and $8 billion. Those senators, all these people want to go back to games, right? Like there's like emotional piece here that I think you had the right ownership. Some of that stuff starts to unlock.
Well, you don't have to agree to disagree on that point. That's fine. But the general construct that everything would be back on the table, yeah, I agree with that. I just don't agree with the RK site. But point is, if you go back to this spring rather, a deal was in place in the state of Virginia for, what was it, $800 million in bonds, yeah. I think, and it had bipartisan support of both Republican and Democratic leadership in the Virginia legislature. And the reason it died is the public outcry against giving Dan Snyder money. And then when that happened, it died on both sides of the aisle, and it was just over. So I do think for that reason then that would be back on the table. You have a non-total sleazeball as the owner. It's a little bit more palatable. And Maryland had the same basic reaction. So, yeah, I think that is the key. And I just don't, you see, I do think Dan could get it done by himself with a little help on an equity injection, because real estate, yeah, part of it is him, but the collateral is the site itself. and so it's not really so much, running a guy's credit, and if he has a credit score of 800, they're going to give him $2 billion. That's not really how real estate works. I think Dan's bigger problem with building the stadium is that he has no experience as a real estate developer at all. Not one thing outside of somebody doing Johnny Rockets for him, and that failed. So I don't know what makes anybody think he could even get a get a development done and run it. Because remember, he's talking about a full mixed use commercial site with all kinds of stuff around it. Dan, I don't know why any lender would think Dan can do that. To me, Dan would need a partner, to help run it with him. And so if I were Dan and I'm trying to get a minority investor, I would maybe try to go find like a national real estate type guy to be the minority partner. And then you go to this lender and say, hey, here's the guy. He knows how to do this. So if I were Dan trying to get out of it, that's maybe what I would do. But like you, I just kind of think just seems like we're too far down the road now, really. And like you said, the NFL has too many avenues to turn off the spigot, to use your words. So I tend to think it's going to get done, but he could have some angel investor, some national commercial real estate guy could swoop in and basically what it would amount to is sort of venture capital almost. You come in, you give the guy equity in the entity, and he helps you build the stadium. That's sort of equity. It's sort of like venture capital financing is kind of what he's looking for in a way.
Yeah, and to your point around the, which I don't disagree with at all, around the owners probably have already talked to him. Ben Fisher from Sports Business Journal is reporting that multiple owners had confronted Dan. So there is credible reporting out there that those conversations have happened in the last 2 weeks. I also got to wonder what people said to Tanya Snyder at that, because she represented at the meeting, right? So you got to wonder what happened on those conversations. So I do think that sort of, owner to owner, kind of like that small club of saying it's over, the Watergate scenario. I think that a version of that has happened. We also don't know, and we hear, if you just listen to what Roger Goodell is telling us. We don't know what's in this Mary Jo White investigation, but they obviously have some clue, and it's gone on for a while. And so we also don't know what they're holding there in terms of, well, this is going to come out, or, we're not
It's
burying
leverage.
this next report. The NFL can't afford to bury the next report, like for their own self-preservation after the Beth Wilkinson disaster. So, and let's not forget, this is where to me, people think Mary Jo White is Beth Wilkinson 2.0. And to some degree it is, right? For the NFL, it's definitely a do-over in terms of doing a real report. But, and yes, there's some of these sexual abuse things in that allegation. But Mary Jo White wasn't a personal rights lawyer, or, she ran the SEC. She
She's a
was,
major federal prosecutor.
yeah, for financial crimes. She was,
Yeah.
she spent time as the nation's #1 financial crimes cop. So, so she, that she wasn't brought in to follow the skirt chasing. She was brought in on the financial stuff. So, and I think that's a lot bigger. And I think she's probably shown Goodell and the league office probably enough on the financial stuff where it's emboldened them to do the backroom stuff.
Yeah, I think they're probably holding her as leverage.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, because as you said, I mean, you don't hire her to do things unless it's very, very, very serious. And yeah, what was it, Wilkinson? Big time Washington corporate lawyer. All of that. I get it, but she's at another. This Mary Jo White lady is at another level, and I agree. And she has the credibility to do it. She's not intimidated. She won't be intimidated by this because, as you said, she was the nation's #1 prosecutor of financial crime, essentially. Um, so I think that's another bargaining chip for the NFL. And so you go, look, the owners don't want you. We have the votes to get you out. We're going to bury you with this report. And we know what's in it. She's told, as you said, there's zero chance she has not reported to the senior leadership of the NFL what she's found. Having been a part of stuff sort of like I don't do criminal law, but having been a part of things sort of down this road a little bit, you don't just do it and never report in. You have to report in to your client about this, okay? At a bare minimum, at least she's talked to them so they know.
Yeah,
It's,
totally. It's good
it's
help. Hey, Mary Jo, we're getting killed out here with the Snyder stuff.
give me an
What do you
update.
got?
Where are you? That's right.
Yeah.
At a bare minimum, at least that has happened. And so think of it. So if you put it all together, we're going to turn off the credit. We're not going to give you money for the stadium, the 200 million. We're not going to let you increase your debt limit. We're not necessarily going to approve every minority partner you can find. So if you find some other Bernie Madoff type slime ball, we're not going to say yes to it. We're holding Mary Jo White's report that we could drop it at any time. We could drop an interim report at least now if we wanted to. We have the votes to vote you off the island. You have no other play, Dan. And maybe that's where they are.
I think that is where they are. I think that is where they are. And I've chuckled a number of times this week that my most fervent wish is for the Snyder family to get $8 billion.
I know. I thought about that too. It's like what we're wishing for is like the football Satan to
Yeah.
get like a billion, $6 billion at least. Because let's
Nothing
talk
would
about
make me.
valuation here, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. Where do we
So,
think this is going?
well, the Broncos sold for 4.65, if I recall. And Washington, by any stretch of the imagination, is a more prominent franchise. It's 90 years old. It's in the nation's capital. It's a much bigger market than Denver. So even from that perspective, just a market share perspective, it's bigger. And then you look at, you take into account the rabid fan base that would come back if there's a new owner, because this franchise sold out every game for 30 years, remember, roughly 30 years. And I think a lot of that would return. So to me, the value is much greater than the Denver Broncos. So I think you're comfortably looking at 6 billion. And if you really had somebody really, like the fan base is all over Bezos right now. And if a guy like Bezos wanted to come in and just swoop in and just get it done, I could see even 7. Just to totally just blow every other bit out of the water. A guy who has access to that level of capital. So I think that if you ask me, I think somewhere between 6 and 7. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I would probably bump it up to 8. I'd say if you wanted to do a ceiling and attic type of deal, or no, a basement and attic type of range, I think 6 to 8 is where I'd set it, and it'll probably fall somewhere in between, um, which is just incredible. It's just mind-boggling to some degree. But the fundamentals are just so strong for this sale.
It's
You've
a
already
it's a
mentioned,
can't miss.
yeah, yeah, and you know the DMV is referred to now, is the DC area, metro area. We used to call it something along those lines. Um, I think it's something like it's the highest concentration of wealth, or the per capita, or not per capita. For personal income, I think it's the highest in the country. So
Is it really?
yeah, you're talking about just a very, very wealthy area, on an individual level. And it's not, and I'm not discounting this because it's still huge, but it's also in the last 15, 20 years transformed itself to be not just a government company town. Tech has moved in there. That their corporate base has expanded as well over these last bunch of years.
Amazon is big.
Yeah, right. Amazon's building a headquarters there. So, now the federal government stuff is already ginormous, but you could, 20 years ago, you say, well, it's just a company town for that, right? It's not just that anymore. And so you're just talking about, now you are talking about government related business related business, just a wealthy populace, a hunger for this stuff to come back. I mean, I think everything opens up. I think, and this is the other. No one wants to talk about this in a way because it's also, you're not really supposed to be able to do this. But in the NFL's revenue sharing setup, put everything else, put the investigations, put all that aside. He is costing them money. And I'm not even talking about the headline stuff. I'm just talking about he's not pulling his weight. Gate receipts, merchandise, TV. I mean, you're talking about a market that regularly gets better ratings for other teams playing that are so he's they can't the league cannot afford the nation's capital, a wealthy area like that, a top 10 media market, to be such an anchor on them with the way they have. If there was every owner for themselves, they'd be laughing at them and at him and moving on. But it's not that. He's costing them large chunks of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, they can't afford it. They don't want to afford it, and I don't blame them. And if you look at the annual revenue, it is a fact that the team is regularly at the bottom of that list, both in pure ticket sales and in total revenue, because the merchandising is shared at some formula also. And so, yeah, all of that is costing them money, and that by itself, forget everything else. That by itself would cause the ownership not to like him. Now, throw in, if these allegations by Jason Friedman are true, and to be fair and impartial about it, Snyder's lawyer, the Holland and Knight guy, Brownlee, denied it all, and denied it in that 34-page letter that I went over when that show you missed. And so they haven't admitted that. So, but if you take that as true, throw in underperforming team, even more underperforming. Forget all the skirt chasing in the office and filming the cheerleaders and all of that stuff. The financial part is of much greater concern to the owners of the NFL, because a lot of these billionaires are slime balls themselves. Okay, Snyder's not the only one. He's just one that's stupid enough to get caught and not know how to bury it. Like Jerry Jones has gotten a lot of these same allegations thrown against him. They had a cheerleader scandal. He's had multiple allegations of his own personal misconduct. He just knows how to bury it all. And it just goes away. Dan Snyder isn't smart enough for that. But if you put all that aside, the financial stuff is the most important to them. And you're right. If this was like the Major League Baseball, they'd go, it's your problem. Like the Miami Marlins for years, just a train wreck when in terms of finances. They don't care because it's not their problem. It's the ownership's problem. In this case, he is costing them a truckload of money. So I think that is another reason. So then you have a guy who's unlikable as just on a personal level. My understanding is they've never really liked him. He's not a guy he kind of fits in the billionaire boys club. He doesn't seem to be that guy. Then you throw in a bunch of allegations. Then you throw in financial allegations of financial misconduct, and you're costing us money. It's no wonder they want him gone.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one thing if they feel like you got to prop up the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? And the way the league's finances are set up, they can absorb that, right? And they're not really costing them that much money. Jacksonville's never going to be a crown jewel by any way.
But they knew that. They know that.
They knew that, right? That was a known as they let Jacksonville as an expansion team. Yes, and I'm not saying they literally can't afford it from a bank.
I know what you mean.
Bottom line, but Washington D.C. I mean, it wasn't that. I think it was only like 5 or 6 years ago that a Dallas Washington Thanksgiving Day game was like the highest rated regular season football game of all time. This was not. This is one of their big horses.
I think that 2012 game was the game we were talking about.
Yeah. So that's not that long ago.
I was in the stadium for that game, by the way, Chris.
Oh, were you? That was RG3, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah. My dad and I drove up to Dallas to go see that. Yeah, it was a cool game, fun game. But anyway, yeah. So there's that. So let's talk about potential owners, shall we? Because there's been a bunch of names thrown around by people who don't know what they're talking about and people who may know what they're talking about. Let's start with Bezos and Jay-Z. That name, Jeff Bezos, is a guy that the fans have thrown around, and my theory on that has always been that this is just a billionaire the fans can name, and so they throw his name out there. But there has been some reporting, like TMZ, for whatever they're worth, reported that
People Magazine.
Yeah, no, everybody may laugh at TMZ, but they tend to get a lot of like slime ball stories right.
Yeah, they're not wrong.
Yeah, they usually are pretty close to right about these kind of things. So the part I don't let me back up. I think the NFL would move mountains to get a minority owner, ethnic minority owner. I don't agree with that. I don't live my life like that, but the fact is the NFL wants that. So that's number one. And so that makes me wonder if that's the reason why Bezos would want Jay-Z involved, is to have a prominent minority involved, because Bezos doesn't need anybody's money. He's, what is he, the third richest guy in the world, second, third, something like that. He could write a check for this. He doesn't need Jay-Z. So if you kind of wonder why he wants Jay-Z, it's probably to get a prominent minority involved. But Bezos, I don't think, if you're a Washington fan, I don't think and you're rooting for Bezos, I don't think you really know what you're in for. Yeah, Jeff Bezos isn't much better than Dan Snyder in some ways, I don't think. And I don't think he's a guaranteed winner on the field. He has a bit of a reputation as a tyrant, allegations of personal misconduct of his own. So I don't know if that's it. And Jay-Z, same thing. He's a prominent rapper and all that, but he's had a ton of weird allegations too. So it's a bit of a weird pairing, but I think that's what it is. Thoughts on Bezos?
Uh, well, I mean, I can't backtrack now, right? So if I've been team anybody but Snyder the whole time, I'm not gonna,
Yeah, that's
I'm
not
not
what I'm
gonna.
asking though. I mean,
Yeah,
give it a
yeah. So
critical
I'm just
analysis.
saying I would be fine with it.
Mm.
I'm not, but I'm not. Yeah, and I agree. Like, do I think he's legitimately interested? Yes, I do. So I don't want to discount that. But yes, I agree with that. He's the only billionaire I can name theory, because because it's just that clear. It's just like a pop culture answer rather as much as anything else. But I do think he's viable. And if you actually look at it from Bezos' perspective, it makes a ton of sense. So it may, and business sense, sure, it makes business sense. That's a given. So I'm not discounting that. But if you think about it from the political influence level and what he is invested in the Washington D.C. area, Washington Post, new Amazon headquarters in Northern Virginia. I mean, and any new owner would get this, but he would certainly get this. New owner, that place is filled with politicians. You get presidents back in the owner's suite, all those things that were just a hallmark of the team in DC, even through the first half of Snyder's ownership, quite frankly. So, uh, you don't think I mean, that's as good a use of lobbying money as you could have, right? So I think, and he's got political existential threats coming at him. There's all kinds of labor stuff. There's all kinds of regulation he's going to want in terms of digital delivery. I mean, everything from like the sexy stuff like unions and labor policies, but there's also like, what are new shipping routes for the, I mean, I got people in my neighborhood in Brooklyn walking around with like mail carts, hand delivering from mail carts Amazon packages, right? They need all kinds of shipping, all kinds of kind of new business regulation. So you could totally see where it would make sense from a political influence standpoint about the world that he wants Amazon to make. So I think it's a completely viable, but I think there are others that are just as viable
Well,
here at
wait,
the
wait,
same
before you get
time.
on to the others, talk to me about your thoughts about why Jay-Z would be involved.
Oh, I just think it's
I think it's a pure
splash.
minority play to me.
I don't.
I'm not even saying that's
I
bad. I'm just
understand
saying
that
it's what it
that would
is.
be of benefit, but I don't think Bezos would need that to get past the owners. And I actually just think it's as much Bezos celebrity driven. I actually think it's Bezos ego. Bezos is like, look at me
Could
as
be.
much as anything else
Could be
on
kind
Jay-Z
of
specifically.
Stan Kasten, when he bought the Dodgers, brought in Magic Johnson and advertised him as a partner in it, and then we realized that Johnson had 50 million in the deal for 2 billion plus, which
Right.
means that he's like got a 0.5% stake. In that a 0.5%. So yeah, 0.5% stake in the team, which means he doesn't have any say in anything, but he's a name. He's beloved in the LA area. All that. So I think Jay-Z would bring a lot of credibility with a certain segment of the fan base, the pop culture related, people are into pop culture. So I think there's certainly it's more than just his ethnic background for sure. When you have a Jay-Z, it brings a kind of another level of star power along, certainly.
And we all assume, I think probably correctly, that a new owner in the stadium looks different, right? Or the fan base is re-energized, or whatever,
Yeah, of
however we want
course.
to quantify that. But if you're really looking at the dollars and the cents and what you got to do here, it's going to take some work, right, to get that to be a working NFL franchise from a fan perspective, from an attendance. So adding a celebrity like Jay-Z, if you have Jay-Z, like people want to be there. So like I think there's
Players would want to
yeah,
be there too.
yeah, exactly. So I just think that it's a smart move that way. Also, I just think, and this is not to discount because I agree on celebrity type stuff, TMZ and people, they're good at what they do. They're not
Yep.
supermarket tabloids. And but I do think that it is also just like we say the fans. Who can you name? These writers is the same thing, like where you're not gonna, I'm looking at a new name. Is this Matt Ishibia? Um, that's not gonna sell. That's not gonna get clicks. So like when you're writing these like first week stories, you're not gonna write about Matt Ishiba. You're writing about Byron Allen, who's a former celebrity and new media mogul and black, and you're going to talk about Jay-Z and Bezos. You're going to write those articles first.
Because people give reporters too much credit. Okay, reporters aren't. Most reporters are not serious business analysts. Darren Ravel is. He's an attorney and all of that. But most reporters are just journalists, J school grads, and they're just reporters, and they really most of the time don't know what they're talking about. They have to rely on analysts to tell them what to write. So yeah, it's clicks. I want to get to Byron Allen because I think he's interesting. He'd actually be my choice if I mean, of the guys that were named and all of that, because I don't know who Sheba is, or, I don't know, but Byron Allen, it would be my choice of someone I think the NFL would want, is what I'm trying to say. I said it badly. He's black, as you said, but he's also a proven businessman. He's a entrepreneurial. He has an entrepreneurial spirit on a mass scale. Byron Allen owns way more stuff than people realize. He's got a ton of media interests, the Weather Channel and all kinds of other things. The NFL asked him to bid on the Broncos last year, and he did, and just got beat out. So I think it's almost impossible to think the NFL wouldn't ask him to bid on Washington also, and they would like him, and I think he's. I Bezos has got so many other things going on that I don't know how much attention he would really have be able to pay to the team. I think you sort of want someone who would be a bit more focused on the franchise itself. I mean, Bezos has run Amazon for God's sakes, and that's his space thing that he has, and all other things. I think Byron Allen, for all his empire, I think would be able to focus a bit more on the team, which is what the NFL would want. So of the two of them, that's probably what I would get. But you had a great, by the way, your analysis of Bezos is great. I mean, the political capital he would have in the nation's capital owning a team. Invite the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee
Yeah.
to a game, you know. I mean, just as an example, so that would help. But Byron Allen, I think, is a very, very. I think Byron Allen would be the NFL's first choice. You ask me.
It's my first choice too. I just worry about a few things. I just don't know if he has the war chest for one thing. So
He
now
might not.
we don't know what financing he's putting together. But he would be the face of a conglomerate of financing.
Yes.
It's not a Bezos writes a check and other billionaire. We sort of somewhat using Bezos as a stand-in because there's other more nameless, faceless billionaires that could also just write the check, right? Your Stan Kroenke's of the world, and even Stan Kroenke's like a level up of notoriety past your normal billionaire.
Yeah.
So, so those people exist. That's not that's not Byron Allen. Now, let's just take a quick aside. The Byron Allen story, as Steve alluded to, is fascinating. For those of you old like Steve and I, you may remember a really horrible primetime magazine show. I think it was on ABC, whatever, early mid '80s, called Real People. Okay, it
Yeah.
was just like it was a stupid show. They just like oh, this mom raised $1 million selling Girl Scout cookies, whatever. Like that kind of just like this is a real American, blah blah blah. He was a host. He started as a correspondent and then became a host of Real People and then a variety of talk shows. This guy went from pretty boy talking head on Real People, going to Dubuque and covering, their 19-year-old mayor or whatever, and to a legitimate media mogul. I mean, when I first saw the name, I was like, that cannot be the
That's
old
what I thought
comedian
too.
talk show
That's
host
exactly
Byron
what I
Allen.
said. Surely this isn't the comedian Byron Allen. That's
It's
really
not
what
a
I
very
thought.
strange name, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was like, oh, sure enough. And then I was started reading about the buying of the Weather Channel. He actually just announced, I think on Thursday or Friday, that he is just spearheading creating a college football network to get HBCU games on, better
Yeah,
television
I saw
coverage.
that.
So,
Yeah.
like, this guy is legit. Like, if we had never known the like entertainment version of Byron Allen, he just would be like a hugely successful media mogul. So he's just an interesting story.
Yeah, he is. He is. And so anyway, so point is don't sleep on Byron Allen just because you know the name Bezos. And like Robert Johnson would be another one that the NFL would really like. Robert, a prominent, probably the most prominent African American businessman in America, probably. He would be another one. I haven't heard his name bandied about necessarily in this context, but you have to think he's on somebody's radar scope there. Um, and none of the other names we've seen or anybody that anybody would necessarily know, really. And it truly could come totally out of left field. Because, just because like Jeff Bezos has got, what is he worth? 100 billion, 80 billion? Who knows? Something in that range. Doesn't mean he wants to overspend. So he could get outbid by someone we have no idea who they are. So just don't sleep on that.
Yeah, and it's not like he's not profiting. I mean, he's already in bed with the NFL. It's not like he's got to get into the NFL game. He's in the
He
NFL
almost
game.
has a conflict of interest, really.
I mean, when I look, and these are kind of things that worry me, but I guess because of my fandom and Snyder gone is my only goal. But you look at Bezos. I mean, it's pretty frightening. Washington Post, local, national, and international titan of industry. Already, and the rumors are that Amazon's in, especially with the performance of Thursday night, especially the technical performance, that Amazon is the front runner for the NFL ticket, or one of
A
three.
front runner.
Yeah, one of three. But the other front runners don't have the track record now of broadcasting NFL games on streaming. That's a big deal. And if anyone tried to watch the game on ESPN Plus, the London game from last week, you added an example of when it doesn't work. And anyone who's got the NFL ticket like me does as well. So that's I mean, my head explodes. Plus the political influence. That's pretty frightening if you think about it.
I mean, it's frightening in terms of his ability to control the league. Yeah, that's, that kind of frightening. And
Yeah,
maybe, I mean, that is almost counterproductive. So if you're one of the 31 other owners, do you want a guy with that much influence, who, by the way, could buy and sell the entire NFC if he wanted to all at once? Do you really want to invite him into your club? It would be intimidating, I think, to some people to do that. Because the only other guy really at Bezos' level is Paul Allen.
and he's
Paul
dead.
Allen. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. He died. Forgot. Sorry, forgot about that. And so there really is Kroenke. I guess maybe the next one. Kroenke is not at that. Kroenke's worth 20, 30 billion. So in that range, and he's not got nearly the level of international influence that Jeff Bezos has. So he would come in and instantly be the largest story in the NFL by far. And then you throw in again, Amazon has Thursday night. Amazon's probably going to get the streaming package. Um, it's a lot, and I don't know if the NFL really wants to let one guy do that. So I
I
kind
think that's very, very true. And to what degree do they make him divest or create some firewalls on some part of that to get in? And how much is
how do you
he
do
going to
that
want to
though? I
choke
mean,
back?
they have a 10-year deal with Amazon. I mean, what are they going
Yeah.
to do? I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I agree. I don't think, from all, whether it's your Rooney Mara, contingent of old guard, whether it's the sort of like forward thinker celebrity owners like your Crafts and your Jerry Jones, or you're just kind of quieter titans of industry like Stan Kroenke's of the world and the dude in Atlanta, like it they'd all, however they rank themselves now in influence and power as NFL owners, they all become number two. They're all
Yep,
fighting for number two in that scenario.
that's right. Now I have another name for you. This ought to be everybody's favorite name. You ready? Robert
Sure.
Griffin III.
Yeah. I don't, Bob, he couldn't even, you couldn't even tell if he was saying Snyder let me in as a minority owner, like, or he wanted to be part of a
I
group.
don't think he even knows what he's even
Yeah.
saying.
It's just like, no, why are you injecting yourself? Like, on like day two. Now, if he wants to go and be like, to your point, like that 0.3 owner of some group and there's a narrative there and all that, okay, fine. I'm not like, I don't really care either way. But like, that you don't need to come out on that afternoon and say, I want in.
Yeah, and he said he apparently said he's got 400 commitments of $400 million, which of course would get
Take
him.
lunch.
Yeah, exactly. That's about 0.8%. You know, think of it. If the team's going to sell for 6 billion, you got 400 million. Well, you're not even at 1%. So
You didn't even make
congratulations,
that much money in the NFL, and I
or
guess it's all
10%. Yeah.
relative. And in his ESPN contract, it's like it's not like it wasn't like a Michael Jordan or somebody, or even like a Peyton Manning or some of these players that you could say, okay, they're interested. We know that this is a goal of theirs. Dude, you're not even that influential
Yeah.
from any standpoint.
No. And again, I mean, okay, he's got like 8% of what he needs. Yeah, I just thought it was kind of fun,
It's so
hilarious.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
He
ridiculous.
got about 48 hours of interviews out of it
Yeah,
though.
he did.
So that's probably mission accomplished, quite frankly. It'll be fascinating to see who steps up. The one thing, and we sort of alluded to this earlier, the one fascinating thing is it does not bode well for my tattoo, but what we're talking about is that most of the players here are already vetted by the NFL because most of the players were through the Denver process, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
They
that
asked
means
Byron Allen to bid. Bezos, yeah.
so they've already, and then all these sort of more nameless, faceless owner group and conglomerates that lost out on Denver, which means they might even be a little bit more. They don't want to lose out again, and they kind of lose and win because you get you potentially get a more valuable franchise by getting the next one. So this could be a faster process
I
that
just
people
think
think.
the wild card in all of it is what DOJ is doing. Because nobody's going to pay full, nobody should pay full value for a team that's about to get indicted by the feds. If that is the case, we don't know what I mean, the DOJ may not be taking that credibly at all. Just because the House Oversight Committee wrote a letter to DOJ does not mean they're taking it seriously. It doesn't mean there's any evidence. So we don't know at all about it. But if it is credible and serious, I just can't imagine how it doesn't depress the value of the team and cause people to be nervous.
I think you'd have to have. I think those negotiations would happen. So like, how much of this just go? I mean, how much of, and not just this federal one, but how much of all? But getting up on 10 investigations at this point. Like getting in almost into double digits. How many of them go away if he's gone? And then on some of these, like, how much is their backroom dealings? Like, okay, this is what the fine's going to be, so just factor that in as part of a cost of doing business of the sale.
Maybe. I mean, I would want to resolve it before
Yeah.
I took command of the team for sure. But I'm just saying if it's serious enough, it may not be possible. It just depends on what it is. I mean, what's the federal crime here? I mean, money laundering, something along those lines, probably. How much is it? A few million. If it's just a few $1,000,000 by Fed terms, that's not a lot.
I think what feeds your wild card fear here is something we actually don't know. I mean, we know the Jason
Yeah.
Friedman, and we know the hiding the money
There's
and
a
all
lot we
that.
don't know.
Right,
Mary
but
Jo White
so
hasn't done investigations for months and months and months on end and to find nothing. There's a lot we don't know.
yeah, so I think it's tough to judge, but I agree like that. But I think that would all be part of the I think that would all be part of the negotiation. And it's so funny. Let's just say Snyder's gone, owner X is in. It's Q1 2023 or whatever. Um, what happened? His damage will still be going on. To your point here, to the team, but also think about let Snyder rides off with his 7.3 billion on his yacht or whatever, and sayonara, the parades happen, all of that. NFL still has the Gruden lawsuit, which they are not performing well in court and all of the sort of lead up bits. There's still,
They've lost a bunch of discovery things in the crude thing.
The hazmat suits don't put the hazmat suits away quite, there's still going to be cleanup.
Yeah, the contamination will still be there. You still need to get the black mold guy out to clean up your back room. just because the dead animal's gone does not mean you don't have to clean the building up.
Yeah, totally. So that should be fascinating. Now, one more theory I'll throw at you, Steve.
Okay.
So there was a funny memes going around that the straw that broke the camel's back here was the fact that FedEx is so detested that Taylor Swift skipped it on her just this week announced National Football Tour stadium, and that the Swifties are so angry that they can't go to DC, and that the stadium can't. It means you can't even get Taylor Swift in the DMV, and there was the last straw.
I don't know. I mean, that's just. I don't understand the whole Swiftie thing. I mean, she's not my cup of tea, but I mean, fine music, but just the devotion to Taylor Swift, I just don't totally understand. It might be because I'm not an 18-year-old girl. Possibly that's why I don't understand. But no, there could be a lot of reasons why she.
Well, I actually think that there was even some legitimate reporting that did say they said,
but really
not worth playing in that stadium.
But if you could get, I forget what the stadium in Baltimore is called, but if you could get the Ravens Stadium instead,
right? You're gonna get the same audience,
same market, yeah.
But it does. We were laughing about this, and it was funny. And I did see some funny "Thank you, Taylor" memes and stuff like that. but there, it's funny because there's a kernel of truth. Not that it had a whit of difference going on here, but it does show you what a sinkhole this has become, right? Because you don't have a viable stadium. You do see these downstream effects of being such a disaster.
Yeah, it is. And there's no, I mean, there's no solution on the horizon for Snyder with the stadium thing, as we talked about either.
Yeah, because these things stay dormant for what? I mean, what do they got 10 games. That's two. Well, no, I guess now one preseason game. So you get. I mean, these things stay dormant for lots of the year.
You know how I knew the moment I knew that Dan and Jason Wright didn't know what they were doing was when Jason Wright was talking about 200 events a year in a hypothetical new stadium. That's an event more than every other day. That is not how any stadium in the country even like SoFi in LA isn't anywhere close to that. That is not, you can't book that many events. You can maybe book that many events in like the House of Blues, if you wanted to, but you're not gonna, that's just not viable. You have to have a better plan than that.
Yeah. You're not going to destroy your asset. You don't want that much activity in these.
No, you don't. But also, there just aren't that many acts to book.
Right, or monster truck pulls or whatever.
Or what? I'm not even talking about just music.
Yeah, anything. Right.
Whatever you're talking
Dancing
about,
monkeys.
there are not 200 of them.
Last thing on this that we'll move on, or
But we're out of time now. We'll have to. Yeah.
Well, Brooklyn Nets. We'll have to visit.
We were going to talk about Kyrie Irving's stupidity. We'll do it another day.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets. They'll give off content, but because I know you care about this, although I know nothing's bringing you back. The brand, new owner. Do you care? Or do you just say we're just going to wipe and repeat?
I think it's fascinating. I think a professional marketing person maybe would laugh at the idea that we need to rebrand for a fourth time in 4 years. That's not smart business, but is the name Commanders, is it such a bust that you just have to do it? I don't think so. The fan base seems to have not really taken to it very well. I mean, there's those sycophants out there. There's a handful of them that just eat it up. But
command.
Yeah, all of that stuff. But most of the fans seem to not like it and all of that. But is it worth it to rebrand again? Because if I was a new owner, first of all, I think if a new owner comes in and does it immediately. Wipe the slate clean right off the bat. But is it worth it? Are you going to sell merchandise and bring the fans back anyway? I think when you dump the name Redskins, which was beloved by the fan base, and a group of people stayed despite everything. If it were me, I think a new owner could drag Commanders along without having a rebrand. That's my thought.
I think it's interesting. I definitely think it's interesting. I think I agree. If it's something that you think you want to do, and I think even if it doesn't make textbook marketing sense to your point, I think it actually, there's good practices and there's practices within the context, and I think you could get away with it, and I don't think it would be. I think you could do it, but you're right. You'd have to do it immediately. It'd almost be like I bought the team. I'm immediately kick. We're rolling back to WFT, and we're gonna do this right this time because
That would be speech number one, day number one. You'd have to do it then.
yeah, because even 3 months later, it's too late, and
Yeah.
and at that point, your good marketing textbook comes back into play because you're like you got too much things to solve. People will get over it. You can already tell there's get over it. The good vibes of the new owner. Maybe they end up 9-8 or whatever. You'd be like, okay, like it's horrible, and it will be in some people's memory banks about just what a S show the whole thing was. From like release, from everything. We don't need to revisit it. It was a
Yeah.
disaster from A to Z. But you know what? We're all moving on, and people will be fine with it. And if we get new ownership and we do a little bit of winning, and we just act like a normal NFL franchise, everyone will be
People won't
tank
care.
man.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's the standard level of thinking. But if you have a guy who's a really out of the box thinker who doesn't care about your marketing, what you learn in marketing 301, yeah, maybe. But like you said, I mean, it have to be day one, moment one, sentence one, word number one. We're changing it. It'd
Yeah,
have to
I,
be
I
that.
would
Otherwise,
agree,
it's not. Yeah.
and I
And
think
by
that
the
could be
way,
viable, and I'd support
yeah,
it.
and it's not Redskins. There's just
Oh, that's
no
never coming.
zero chance that is going to happen. Much as I would love it, there's a zero chance of that happening. So just you can forget that.
But anybody who claims that Dan Snyder was good at anything, there are two. These are just shows you two giant ways
He's
that
good
he
at
was
being a
not.
total jerk.
Right. Yes, that's true. But they knew the name was under assault. It was under assault since the 1992 Super Bowl year. So like
There have
this
been
was never.
lawsuits going on since the
Yeah,
90s about it.
yeah. So you plan for this. We've gone over this, but you have your trademarks. You know what you're going to do the second you have to give it up, and they obviously did not. And then you could have done Warriors. You could have done a bunch of things that does that keeps a bunch of stuff, and that a smart organization would have had contingency plan. It hits the table. We're rolling out with this. They obviously did not have that. Then the never all caps change the name. Okay. Then we go. So that was just a ginormous fail on their part as an organization. Then you go here where it's like, we're never going to be forced to sell. Where a year and a half ago, you knew that that was a very viable thing. Don't rebrand. Because if you had turned, you'd send another $500 million if it's still WFT and and then a new owner gets to completely change this over. Like they just but
I've
having something everyone hates, it just is like, wouldn't you rather sell with generic?
Yeah, I've had more than one person who knows that I'm involved in Washington media to whatever extent I am, who's come to me who's not and said, Washington football team was better than Commanders.
100%.
Yeah. And by the way, I could have lived with that. I could have forced myself to live with that just incidentally. But so, okay, let's wrap because we got to wrap. We're over time. Let's do two things. Three questions. Is Snyder going to sell, and if so, when? And is the new if so, is the new owner going to change the name? I'll go first since I sprung it on you. I said this on the Hogsty. I want everybody to be cautious, and it's not a slam dunk, but I do think Snyder's going to sell. And if it happens, it's going to happen quickly. It's going to be light speed. So they want to get it done, rip the Band-Aid off. So I think that's going to sell. And then I think they're probably going to keep Commanders. That's my prediction. What do you think?
I probably would co-sign that. I think there are enough bidders lining up. I think there are enough pre-vetted buyers voted the lining up. So these are people the NFL knows. These are finance companies, all that stuff is a known. They got dockets on all these people that I think are going to be. So I don't think it's going to be some crazy thing. I think it'll be in demand. So I think it happens fast. As I've said, I hope it happens fast, but that
Not too
before
fast.
the Super Bowl. But I do think we're talking winter spring 2023. I think that's the kind of window, which is fast for these things. That is fast. And I think that probably Commanders stays because new owner is going to have so many things to deal with that one, even if they hate it and they understand everyone hates it, I think they're going to be like, you know what, it's just not in my top 5 list of things I got to solve.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought too.
So we agree on that. So we will see. And I'm sure there will be new news between recording and publishing.
Oh, probably so. That's the way it always goes. But what'll happen is that it'll be an announced sale, and all this whole discussion we've had for an hour will be totally for naught.
Well, if there's an announced sale,
We'll do an emergency
we'll do
pod.
an emergency pod.
We will.
That seems a little quick, but I think we can safely make that pledge.
We will. We can do that.
All right, Steve. What are they? If you publish the big Kurt returns, but this really is a wet blanket on Kurt returns, huh?
Yeah, well, we did, the Hogstye show that was released on Thursday. That was the Minnesota preview, and we spent 30 minutes talking about the Snyder stuff there too. So nobody's talked more about this in the past week than me in public. But yeah, the Kirk returns thing, I think he's going to get a negative response from the fans. Whatever Washington fans are actually there, it's going to be pretty negative for him.
Oh yeah, I don't see.
And by the way, just to what we have going here, the Hogstye shows released on Thursday. Rick Snyder skipped a week because he was moving of his show Seasons of Discontent, but it'll be back next week, so that'll be there. And then we have all of our regular written content. And plus, if you guys want somewhere to chat during the games, that is not the hellscape that is Twitter, Elon Musk or no Elon Musk, come to our comment section because there's always been a vibrant game day community there.
Well, there you go. So enjoy Kirk returns.
Kurt returns.
Yeah, I do it on purpose. All right. We'll see you.